I stared at my phone, my mother's words still echoing in my ears like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. 3 weeks before Christmas, and she had just told me that my 2 kids and I weren't invited to the family gathering this year. My younger brother Derek was bringing his new girlfriend home to meet everyone, and he specifically requested that Emma and Lucas not be there. They might ruin the perfect image he wanted to present. My mother's voice had been apologetic but firm, like she was delivering news about a canceled dentist appointment rather than excluding her own grandchildren from Christmas. I sat there on my worn couch, the phone still in my hand, replaying the conversation. I had said those 2 words that came so automatically after years of being the understanding older brother. I understand. Then I hung up. But I didn't understand. Not really. How do you understand your own family erasing you from the most important holiday of the year? The apartment felt smaller suddenly, the walls closing in. I looked around at the life I had built from the wreckage of my divorce 3 years ago. It wasn't much by some standards, but it was honest. The small Christmas tree already stood in the corner, decorated with handmade ornaments Emma and Lucas had created over the years. Paper snowflakes hung from the ceiling. Their artwork covered the refrigerator. This was home. My mind drifted back to how I got here. I married Amanda when I was 24, fresh out of trade school with my automotive technician certification. She was my high school sweetheart, the girl who made me believe in happy endings. We had Emma 2 years later, then Lucas 2 years after that. I worked long hours at the auto shop, sometimes 60 or 70 hours a week, to make sure we had everything we needed. I thought I was doing the right thing, being a provider, being responsible. Then one Tuesday evening, Amanda sat me down and told me she was leaving. She had fallen in love with Marcus, her personal trainer at the gym I had bought her a membership to for her birthday. She said she married too young, that she needed to find herself, that she felt trapped in a life she never really chose. 3 months later, the divorce was final. She moved to California with Marcus, sent child support occasionally, and called the kids on their birthdays. Sometimes. My parents were supportive during the divorce, at least on the surface. My mother brought casseroles and helped with the kids when I had to work late. My father gave me advice about custody arrangements. But there were comments, little digs that stung more than they probably meant to. Maybe you should have seen it coming, Sean. Perhaps if you had spent more time at home, did you really not notice she was unhappy? Derek, on the other hand, had sailed through life on a different current entirely. 5 years younger than me, he was the golden child who could do no wrong. While I was changing oil and rotating tires, Derek was getting his marketing degree at the state university. I helped pay for his textbooks when he ran short on money. I gave him my old Honda Civic when he needed a car for his internship. I covered for him when he missed family dinners because of parties or dates. Now Derek drove a luxury sedan, worked at a prestigious marketing firm downtown, and lived in a sleek, high-rise apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows. He posted pictures on social media of business trips to Miami and Los Angeles, fancy restaurants, networking events with people in expensive suits. He rarely visited me or the kids, always too busy with client meetings, industry conferences, building his brand. I had never resented him for it. I was proud of my little brother. I thought he was proud of me too, in his own way. I was the steady one, the reliable one, the one who showed up and did the work without complaining. Apparently, that made me forgettable, erasable, inconvenient. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. Emma and Lucas were at their after-school program, wouldn't be home for another hour. I sat in the silence, holding my phone, staring at the screen. Then it buzzed. A group text message from my extended family. Aunt Patricia had started a thread about the Christmas gathering. Everyone was chiming in with excited messages. "Can't wait to see everyone! So excited to meet Derek's girlfriend. Should I bring my famous green bean casserole? What time should we arrive?" I scrolled through 23 messages. Not one person mentioned me. Not one person asked where I would be, or if I was bringing the kids. It was like we had already vanished, edited out of the family portrait before the picture was even taken. My mother hadn't told anyone we were excluded. To them, it probably looked like I was just being quiet, maybe busy with work. They had no idea that their nephew and niece, their cousin's kids, had been deemed unacceptable for the perfect family Christmas. My hands started shaking. Not from sadness anymore, but from something else. Something that felt like anger, beginning to wake up after a long sleep. That evening, Emma came bounding through the door with her backpack bouncing on her shoulders. Her cheeks flushed from the cold December air. Lucas followed behind her, dragging his coat on the floor like he always did despite my reminders to hang it up. They were beautiful, my kids. Emma had my dark hair and her mother's green eyes. Lucas had my blue eyes and a smile that could light up a room. They were good kids. Kind kids. The kind of children any grandparent should be proud to claim. Emma dropped her backpack and ran to me. "Dad, are we going to Grandma and Grandpa's house for Christmas like always?" She was 8 years old, smart as a whip, and already learning to read the room better than most adults. I could see the hope in her eyes, the excitement of continuing a tradition she loved. I felt my chest tighten. How do you tell your child that she's not wanted? How do you explain that her uncle thinks she and her brother would ruin his perfect image? I had rehearsed this moment in my head all afternoon, trying to find words that wouldn't break their hearts or make them feel like they had done something wrong. I knelt down to her level, putting on my best smile. "Actually, sweetie, I think we're going to have our own special Christmas here this year. Just the three of us. We can make it really fun, do whatever we want, maybe have breakfast for dinner, watch movies all day, build a blanket fort." Lucas perked up at that. "A blanket fort? Can we make it really big?" "Of course, buddy. The biggest one ever." But Emma wasn't convinced. Her face fell slightly, that perceptive look crossing her features. "But what about seeing Aunt Patricia and Uncle Tom? And our cousins? I made a drawing at school for Grandma. She was so proud of it when I told her about it last week." The mention of last week stung. My mother had been planning this exclusion while still playing the role of excited grandma, probably already knowing that Emma's drawing would never be delivered, that these plans would never happen. "Well," I started, struggling to find the right words. "Uncle Derek has a special friend visiting. The gathering is going to be really small this year, just for grown-ups to have boring conversations about boring stuff. You guys would probably be bored anyway." Lucas accepted this easily, already distracted by the idea of the blanket fort. But Emma kept watching me, her green eyes searching my face. She asked quietly, almost in a whisper, "Don't they want us there, Dad?" Those 6 words nearly broke me. I pulled both kids into a hug, holding them tight. "Of course they want you," I lied, hating myself for it. "It's just complicated grown-up stuff. But I promise you, we are going to have the best Christmas ever, just the 3 of us. You have my word." Emma hugged me back, but I could feel her doubt, her sadness. Kids know when adults are lying to protect them. It doesn't make the lie hurt less. It just teaches them that sometimes love comes with conditions, that sometimes you're not quite good enough for the table. Over the next few days, I threw myself into work and planning. I picked up extra shifts at the auto shop, working late into the evenings after the kids were in bed. My boss, grateful for the help during the busy winter season, didn't ask questions. The overtime pay would help me afford better presents, make Christmas morning special enough to overshadow the absence of extended family. Maybe I just couldn't carry it alone anymore. So I told him. The whole story spilled out. The phone call from my mother, Derek's request, the exclusion of my kids, the group text where my entire family acted like we didn't exist. Brian listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and let out a long breath. "That is completely messed up, Sean. That's not family. That's not how you treat people. Especially not kids who never did anything wrong." It felt validating to hear someone else say it, to have my anger and hurt reflected back as justified. "I'm just trying to make Christmas good for them despite all this," I said. "They deserve better than to feel rejected." "You all deserve better," Brian corrected. "Look, if you change your mind, my wife and I would love to have you guys over for Christmas. Serious offer. The more the merrier." I appreciated it, really did, but I knew I needed to do this on my own. "Thanks, man. Really. But I think we need our own Christmas this year. Just us. Make new traditions, you know?" Brian nodded, understanding. "Just know the offer stands. And for what it's worth, your brother sounds like a real piece of work." That same evening, my phone rang. My mother's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. I picked up. Her voice was strained, artificially cheerful. "Sean, honey, I have a small favor to ask. Would you mind dropping off Emma and Lucas' presents at the house before Christmas? Maybe the 23rd? We still want to have gifts for them under the tree, of course. We just need you to bring them by when Derek and his girlfriend aren't there." I held the phone away from my ear for a moment, staring at it like it had personally insulted me. "You want me to deliver presents for children who aren't invited to open them? It's not like that," she protested weakly. "Well, give them the presents later, maybe at New Year's. We just don't want Melissa, that's Derek's girlfriend, to wonder why there are presents for children under the tree when Derek told her there aren't any young kids in the immediate family." My hand tightened around the phone. He told her there aren't any kids in the family? Well, not in so many words, she backtracked. He just said the family Christmas would be adults only this year. "Please, Sean, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Oh, and if you still have that nice bottle of wine we gave you last year, Derek was hoping you could bring that too. Melissa's family owns a vineyard, and Derek wants to make a good impression." I heard it then, in the background. My father's voice, thinking I couldn't hear. "Make sure he brings the good wine we gave him last year too. Derek's girlfriend's family owns a vineyard. They weren't just excluding me and my children. They were using me. Expected me to deliver gifts like some kind of holiday courier service, to hand over wine so Derek could impress his girlfriend's wealthy family." The insult, layered upon insult, until it became something almost absurd. "He'll think about it," I said flatly, and ended the call. I sat there in the quiet apartment, Emma and Lucas already asleep in their shared bedroom down the hall, and made a decision. I wasn't delivering anything. I wasn't playing along with this charade. I was going to focus on my kids, on making Christmas morning magical within these modest walls, and let Derek's perfect image stand on its own merit or crumble under the weight of his lies. 2 weeks before Christmas, Emma had her school Christmas concert. She had been practicing her solo for weeks, a sweet rendition of Silent Night that she sang around the apartment constantly. I wouldn't have missed it for anything in the world. I invited my parents, sending a text with the date, time, and location of the school auditorium. Part of me still hoped, despite everything, that they would show up for their granddaughter. The response came 3 hours later. A text from my mother. "So sorry, we can't make it. We're helping Derek get his place ready for Melissa's visit next week. She's staying at his apartment for a few days before Christmas. You understand. Give Emma a hug from us." After the concert, as parents milled around, congratulating their kids and taking photos, a woman approached me. I recognized her vaguely from other school events, one of those faces you see repeatedly but never quite connect with. She was probably in her mid-30s, with kind eyes and an easy smile. "Your daughter was wonderful," she said. "That solo was beautiful." "Thank you," I replied, watching Emma across the room showing off her performance to some friends. "She's been practicing for weeks, I can tell. I'm Catherine, by the way. My daughter Zoe is in Emma's class. The girl with the braids who played the triangle. I remembered seeing them together sometimes at pickup. Nice to officially meet you, Sean." We chatted for a few minutes about the concert, about the upcoming winter break, casual parent small talk. Then Catherine said something that caught me off guard. "I've noticed you're at all the school events. Not every parent makes it to everything, but you're always here, always engaged. It's really nice to see." I shrugged, unsure how to respond to the compliment. "They're only young once, right? Want to be present while I can. That's a good philosophy." Catherine paused, seeming to consider her words. "I'm a single parent, too. My husband passed away 3 years ago, so I get it, the juggling act, making sure they know they're loved even when it's just you." "I'm sorry for your loss," I said genuinely. "Thank you. It gets easier, but different. Anyway, I was wondering, what are your Christmas plans? Doing anything special?" "Just keeping it low-key," I said, not wanting to explain the whole messy situation. The 3 of us at home, making it cozy. Something flickered across Catherine's face, sympathy maybe, or understanding. She started to say something, then stopped herself. "Well, if you ever want to arrange a play date for the kids, Zoe and Emma seem to get along really well. I think they'd enjoy it. That would be great, I said, meaning it. We exchanged numbers, and Catherine gave me one more smile before heading off to find her daughter. It was a small moment, a brief connection, but it reminded me that not everyone saw my circumstances as shameful or inconvenient. Some people just saw a parent trying his best. The next day, something strange happened. I got a Facebook friend request from someone named Julia Patterson. I didn't recognize the name, but when I clicked on the profile, I saw we had several mutual friends: Derek, my mother, my father, several extended family members. The profile picture showed a woman in her early 30s with dark hair and a warm smile, standing on a beach somewhere tropical. Curiosity got the better of me, and I accepted the request. Immediately, a message notification popped up. Julia Patterson had sent me a direct message. My pulse quickened as I opened it. "Hi, Sean. I'm sorry to reach out like this, but I think you should know something about Christmas. I hope this isn't overstepping." I stared at the message, confused. Who was this person? I typed back. "Hi, Julia. I'm sorry, but who are you exactly?" Her response came quickly. "I'm Melissa's sister, Derek's girlfriend. We've never met, but I heard your name mentioned and did some digging. I think you and I need to talk." My heart started pounding. I typed back, "I'm listening." What came next was a series of messages that made my blood run cold. Julia explained that her sister Melissa had been dating Derek for 8 months. Melissa had mentioned to Julia that she was excited to go home with Derek for Christmas to meet his wonderful family. According to Derek, his family was extremely close-knit, sophisticated, and successful. He had specifically told Melissa about his older brother, the successful business owner who was always traveling for work. Julia's next message hit like a punch to the gut. Derek told Melissa, "You're in Europe right now on business. He said you're some kind of international car dealership owner, always flying between London and New York. That's why Melissa won't be meeting you at Christmas. You're supposedly out of the country." I read the message 3 times, each time feeling more stunned. He had created an entire fictional version of me, complete with a career and a lifestyle that bore no resemblance to reality. And in this fiction, I apparently had no children. I typed back, "Melissa doesn't know I have kids." Julia's response was immediate. Derek told her he has no nieces or nephews. He said it's just him and his parents for Christmas, very intimate. My sister values family more than anything. She comes from a big, close family. That's part of why she was so excited about Derek. He painted this picture of a perfect family dynamic. Another message followed. "I found out the truth by accident. I was at my parents' house last week and saw an old photo on their mantel. It was from Derek's Facebook from a few years ago, a family gathering. There were kids in the photo. When I asked Melissa about it, she looked confused and said Derek definitely told her there were no young kids in the immediate family. That's when I started digging and found your profile. Those are your kids in that photo, aren't they?" "Yes," I typed back, my hands shaking. "Emma and Lucas. They're 8 and 6. Julia sent one more message. "I'm so sorry. I debated whether to reach out, but this felt wrong. My sister deserves to know the truth about who she's dating. And you deserve to know that Derek is literally erasing you and your children from existence to impress her family. Melissa's parents are wealthy. Her father owns several businesses. I think Derek sees her as a career opportunity as much as a relationship." I sat back, my mind reeling. This was worse than I thought. Derek wasn't just embarrassed by my circumstances or worried about managing complicated family dynamics. I could tell my parents what I learned, but they had already chosen his side. I could do nothing and let Derek's house of cards stand, but that felt like accepting my own erasure. The next morning, after dropping the kids at school, I called my mother. I needed to hear it from her directly, needed to confirm what Julia had told me. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice cautious. "Sean, is everything okay? I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Does Melissa know I exist? Does she know about Emma and Lucas?" The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. Then my mother sighed. "Derek asked us to be careful about what we discussed during her visit. He wants to make a good first impression." "That's not what I asked," I pressed. "Does she know I exist?" Does she know about my children? Another pause. He told her you're a businessman who travels internationally. He didn't specifically mention that he has nieces and nephews. No. So he lied to her. He didn't lie exactly, my mother said defensively. He just simplified things. Has planning to tell her everything once they're more serious, once she's more invested in the relationship. When? I asked, my voice rising. After they're engaged? After they're married? When does my family stop being a secret? You're being dramatic, Sean. This is just for one holiday season. I took a breath, trying to stay calm. What exactly did Derek ask you not to talk about? My mother's voice became uncomfortable. He asked us not to bring up certain topics that might seem complicated or might give the wrong impression. What topics? Your divorce, she said quietly. Your job at the auto shop. The kids. Anything that might seem, well, blue-collar or messy. Melissa comes from a very refined background, and Derek wants her to see our family in the best possible light. Do you hear yourself? I asked, incredulously. You're erasing your own grandchildren to help Derek maintain a lie. You're pretending I don't exist so he can impress some woman. We're trying to support him, she snapped back. The same way we supported you during your divorce. Derek has worked so hard to build his career and his life. This woman's family has connections that could help him. We're just trying to give him the best chance. You never erased Derek from my life when I was going through hard times, I shot back. You never asked him to pretend to be someone else or to hide parts of the family. Why am I different? Because Derek never asked us to choose, she said, her voice sharp now. You're being selfish, Sean. It's one Christmas, one holiday. Can't you just let your brother have this? And what happens after Christmas? I asked. Do I stay erased? Do Emma and Lucas stay hidden? When does Derek plan to gradually introduce the full family situation, as you put it? He said once Melissa is more invested, once they're more serious, he'll start explaining things gradually. These relationships take time, Sean. You, of all people, should understand that. I felt like I was talking to a stranger. This woman who raised me, who used to defend me on the playground, who cried at my wedding, was now treating my existence like an inconvenient truth to be managed and concealed. I need to go, I said quietly. Sean, wait. Don't do anything rash. Don't ruin this for Derek out of spite. Before I could respond, I heard my father's voice in the background, sharp and clear. He must have grabbed the phone from my mother because suddenly his voice was directly in my ear. You've always been jealous of your brother's success, he said coldly. Don't ruin this for him out of spite. He's going places you never could, Sean. He has potential. Don't drag him down because you're stuck. Those words hit harder than anything else. My father, the man who taught me to change a tire, who came to my high school graduation, who walked me through my first car repair, thought I was stuck, thought I was dragging Derek down, thought my jealousy was the problem rather than Derek's lies. I hung up without responding. My hands were shaking so badly I had to set the phone down on the kitchen counter. I stood there in my small apartment, surrounded by my kids' drawings and photographs, by evidence of a life lived honestly, if not perfectly, and felt something shift inside me. I was done being understanding, done being accommodating, done shrinking myself to make room for Derek's ambitions, done teaching my children that their existence was something to apologize for. I picked up my phone and opened the message thread with Julia. Are you still willing to help me with something? Her response came within minutes. Absolutely. What do you need? Over the next hour, we crafted a plan. Nothing vengeful, nothing cruel, just the truth, delivered at the right moment. Julia would arrange for Melissa to see reality with her own eyes, to understand exactly who Derek was beneath the carefully constructed image. I wouldn't sabotage Derek directly. I would simply exist, openly and honestly, and let the consequences unfold naturally. The days crawled by. I worked my shifts at the auto shop, helped Emma and Lucas with homework, made dinner, read bedtime stories. Normal life continued while I waited for the other shoe to drop. I didn't hear from my parents. The family group text continued with excited messages about Christmas plans. I stopped reading them. Then, on December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, my phone exploded with calls. My mother's name flashed across the screen again and again. I let the first 3 calls go to voicemail. On the 4th, I answered. "Sean," she gasped. Her voice panicked. "We have a situation. Derek and Melissa showed up early. They were supposed to arrive tomorrow, but they came tonight as a surprise, and there are presents under the tree for Emma and Lucas that people already dropped off, and Melissa is asking questions." "What kind of questions?" I asked calmly, though my heart was racing. "She wants to know who these children are." Derek told her they're distant cousins, but the tags say love Grandma and Grandpa, and she's confused because we're supposed to be his parents, not some distant relative's parents. Derek is furious. He wants us to hide all the presents, all the photos, anything that shows we have grandchildren. "I see," I said, my voice flat. "We need you to promise not to come to the house," my mother begged. "Please, Sean. Don't ruin this now. We're so close to getting through this." "Where did you tell Melissa I am?" I asked. My mother hesitated. "Derek told her you're in London, on business." "Interesting," I said. "And what happens when she finds out I'm 20 minutes away?" "You can't," my mother started, but I cut her off. "I'm not promising anything," I said, and hung up. An hour later, at 7:30 in the evening, there was a sharp knock on my apartment door. Emma and Lucas were in the living room, decorating cookies and watching a Christmas movie. I told them to stay put and walked to the door, my stomach tight with anticipation. I opened it to find 4 people standing in the hallway. My mother and father, both looking furious and panicked. Derek, pale and sweating despite the cold December night. And a woman I'd never met but recognized from photos, beautiful and poised in an expensive coat, her expression confused. Before anyone could speak, my mother hissed at me. "We need to talk. Now," Derek blurted out, his voice higher than normal. "Why did you tell Julia to message my girlfriend?" I didn't say anything yet. I just stood there, meeting each of their eyes in turn. Then the woman, Melissa, stepped forward. She looked at me carefully, her gaze sharp and assessing. "Wait," she said slowly, her voice uncertain. "You're Sean, Derek's brother? The one who's supposed to be in London?" Then she looked past me, through the open doorway into my apartment, and her eyes landed on Emma and Lucas at the kitchen table. Her expression transformed, confusion giving way to shock. "And those are children," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She turned to Derek, her face pale. "Derek, whose children are those?" The hallway felt like it had frozen in time. 5 adults, standing in tense silence while in the background, Emma and Lucas laughed at something in their movie, completely unaware of the confrontation unfolding at the door. I made a decision in that split second. Whatever happened next, my kids weren't going to be spectators to it. "Come inside," I said quietly, stepping back to open the door wider. Melissa walked in first, her eyes never leaving Emma and Lucas. My parents followed, both looking like they wanted to be anywhere else in the world. Derek came last, his face a mask of panic and anger. I closed the door behind them. Emma looked up from the cookies, her face brightening when she saw familiar faces. "Grandma! Grandpa!" She jumped up from her chair, covered in flour and cookie crumbs. "Did you change your mind about Christmas?" Lucas bounced over too, trailing bits of green frosting. "Are we invited now?" The room went completely still. Melissa turned slowly to face my parents, then Derek, her expression hardening with each passing second. "What is she talking about?" she asked, her voice controlled but laced with ice. My mother tried to laugh it off, the sound forced and brittle. Children have such imaginations. They get confused about plans sometimes. But Emma, bless her honest heart, wasn't confused at all. She looked up at my mother with innocent eyes. "But Dad said we can't come to Christmas because Uncle Derek doesn't want us there. He said we'd ruin the perfect image." Lucas added helpfully, his 6-year-old voice carrying clearly across the apartment. "Dad said it's okay, though. We're going to have our own Christmas with blanket forts." Melissa's face had gone from pale to white. She looked at Derek, at my parents, at me, at the kids. Her mouth opened and closed twice before words came out. "What are they talking about, Derek?" Derek started to speak, his voice cracking. "Sean, what have you been telling your kids? That's not what happened. You're twisting things." I held up my hand. "Emma, Lucas, I need you to go to your room for a few minutes, okay? Take your cookies with you. I need to talk to the grown-ups." "But Dad," Emma protested. Now, please, I said gently but firmly. They obeyed, sensing the tension, grabbing their plate of cookies and hurrying down the hall. Emma threw one last confused look over her shoulder before disappearing into their bedroom. I heard the door click shut. Once they were gone, I turned to face the adults in my living room. Melissa stood in the center, her designer handbag clutched in her hands like a shield. My parents hovered near the door, looking guilty and trapped. Derek stood frozen near the couch, his carefully maintained composure crumbling. I looked directly at Melissa. "I'm Sean," I said, my voice steady and calm despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "I'm Derek's older brother. Those are my children, Emma and Lucas. They're 8 and 6. They're Derek's niece and nephew. I'm not in London. I live 20 minutes from my parents' house. I've been excluded from Christmas because Derek asked our parents to pretend I don't exist." "That's not true," Derek started, but I cut him off. I pulled out my phone and played the voicemail my mother had left weeks ago, her voice explaining clearly why I wasn't invited, mentioning Derek's request, talking about the perfect image. The room filled with her recorded words, each one landing like a stone in still water. Then I showed the text messages, the ones about dropping off presents, the ones about bringing the wine, the entire thread of my family discussing Christmas plans while acting like I didn't exist. Melissa listened to it all, her face growing harder with each piece of evidence. When I finished, she turned to Derek. Her voice was quiet, dangerous. "You told me your brother was a successful businessman who travels the world. You said he owns luxury car dealerships in Europe. You told me he'd be in London for Christmas." Derek's mouth opened and closed. He looked at my parents for help, but they stared at the floor. "I was going to tell you everything eventually," he finally managed. "I just wanted you to fall in love with me first before dealing with all the complicated family stuff." "Complicated?" Melissa's voice rose slightly. "A brother and his children are complicated?" My father tried to step in, his voice taking on that authoritative tone he used when he wanted to end discussions. "Sean has had a rough few years. Divorce, money troubles. Derek didn't want to burden you with all that negativity during the holidays. He was trying to protect you from family drama." Melissa turned on my father with a look that could have melted steel. "Burden me? With the existence of family members?" She looked around the apartment, really seeing it for the first time. The small but tidy space, the second-hand furniture, the Christmas tree with handmade ornaments, the refrigerator covered in children's artwork, the walls lined with photographs of me and the kids, photos from school events and birthday parties and ordinary moments of life. Her eyes landed on one photo in particular, me in my work uniform from the auto shop, grease-stained and smiling, holding up a wrench. She walked over to it, studying it closely. "You're a mechanic," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," I said. "I am." She turned back to Derek, and I saw something break in her expression. "And Derek told me his brother owned a chain of luxury car dealerships across Europe, that you were this international businessman, always flying between London and New York for meetings." The silence that followed was deafening. Melissa continued, her voice shaking now with anger or hurt, or both. "My sister Julia called me this morning. She told me she reached out to your brother because she was concerned. I didn't believe her at first. I thought maybe she was being paranoid or had misunderstood something. But I insisted we come here tonight to clear it up. I told Derek I wanted to meet his brother before Christmas, that it was important to me." She looked at Derek with something like disgust. "You've been lying to me for 8 months. About your family, about your life, about who you are. Everything you told me was designed to impress me, to make yourself look better, more successful, more put together than you actually are. It's not like that," Derek pleaded, his voice desperate now. "I love you, Melissa. I just wanted to be good enough for you. Your family is so successful, so perfect. I didn't want you to see all the messy parts of mine." "So you erased them?" Melissa shot back. "You erased your brother and his children because they didn't fit the image you wanted to project? What kind of person does that?" My mother tried one more time. "Melissa, dear, this is all a misunderstanding. Derek was just trying to make a good impression. Surely you can understand wanting to put your best foot forward in a new relationship." Melissa turned to my mother, and her voice was ice. "My father grew up poor," she said. He built his business from nothing. He worked as a janitor while going to night school. He put himself through community college while supporting his parents and his younger siblings. The only thing he values more than success is integrity and family loyalty. He would never respect a man who erases his own family to impress people. She looked back at Derek, and I saw the moment she made her decision. We're done. I can't be with someone who lies about something so fundamental. Someone who would throw away his own family for social climbing. That's not who I want to build a life with. Melissa, please, Derek started, reaching for her. She stepped back. Don't. Just don't. She turned to me, and her expression softened. I'm sorry you were put through this. Your children are beautiful. You deserve so much better than this. She gestured vaguely at my parents and Derek. Then she walked to the door, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Derek stood frozen for a moment, then suddenly sprang to life. Melissa, wait! We can talk about this. He ran after her, his voice echoing in the hallway as he chased her down the stairs. My parents stood in my living room, looking shell-shocked. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then my mother started crying, covering her face with her hands. You've ruined Derek's life, she sobbed. He was so happy. He finally found someone special and you ruined it. I felt something cold settle in my chest. I didn't ruin anything, I said quietly. Derek did this to himself, and you both helped him. My father moved to comfort my mother, his arm around her shoulders. But his face was different now, not angry anymore, just tired, deflated. He looked at me with something that might have been shame. We were just trying to help him succeed, he said weakly. By erasing me and your grandchildren, I asked. That's not help. That's betrayal. My mother looked up, her mascara running, her face blotchy with tears. We never meant to hurt you. We thought you'd understand. You've always been so strong, so capable. Derek needed us more. So you took me for granted, I said. You assumed I'd just accept being invisible because I wouldn't make a fuss about it. You assumed my kids would be fine with learning that their grandparents value their uncle's image more than their existence. That's not fair, my mother protested weakly. Fair? I felt my voice rise despite my efforts to stay calm. Fair would have been treating both your sons with equal respect. Fair would have been telling Derek that lying to his girlfriend about his family was unacceptable. Fair would have been standing up for your grandchildren instead of hiding them like they're something to be ashamed of. My father sank onto the couch, his face in his hands. Your brother always needed more help, he said, his voice muffled. You were always so independent, so self-sufficient. You figured things out on your own. Derek needed guidance, support, someone to open doors for him. I walked to the window, looking out at the December night, at the lights from other apartments where other families were preparing for Christmas. So you helped him by teaching him that integrity doesn't matter? That family is disposable if it doesn't serve your interests? That's the guidance you gave him? We made a mistake, my father said quietly. A terrible mistake. My mother stood up, wiping at her eyes. What do we do now? How do we fix this? I turned to face them. That's not my question to answer. That's yours. You decide what kind of grandparents you want to be. What kind of parents. The door is open, but not under conditions. You're either all in with all of us, or you're out. I won't let my kids learn that love is conditional, that they have to earn their place at the table. And Derek? My mother asked in a small voice. Derek needs to figure out who he wants to be. I'm not his keeper, but I'm also not going to pretend to be someone I'm not or hide my kids so he can maintain a fantasy. My parents left quietly, no resolution, no promises, just a heavy silence and the weight of choices that couldn't be undone. The door clicked shut behind them, and I stood alone in my living room, the sound of the Christmas movie still playing faintly from the kids' bedroom. I walked down the hall and opened their door. Emma and Lucas were curled up on Emma's bed, the plate of cookies between them, watching a tablet. They looked up when I came in, their faces uncertain. Is everything okay, Dad? Emma asked. It's complicated, I said honestly, sitting on the edge of the bed. Sometimes grown-ups mess up and hurt each other. But I want you both to know something really important. You did nothing wrong. Nothing. You are wonderful, amazing kids, and anyone who doesn't see that is missing out, okay? Lucas nodded, but Emma, as always, saw deeper. Are Grandma and Grandpa mad at us? They're not mad at you, I promised. They're figuring some things out. But no matter what happens with them, you and me, we're solid. We're a team. And we're going to have the best Christmas, just like I promised. Over the next 2 days, leading up to Christmas, I heard nothing from my family. No calls, no texts, no updates on Derek or his situation with Melissa. The silence was almost worse than the conflict. I focused on the kids, on making cookies and watching holiday movies and building that massive blanket fort in the living room that Lucas had requested weeks ago. On Christmas Eve, we stayed up late hanging stockings and leaving out cookies for Santa. The kids were buzzing with excitement, all thoughts of family drama forgotten in the magic of Christmas morning anticipation. I tucked them into bed, read them the night before Christmas, and kissed their foreheads. When I finally collapsed into my own bed near midnight, exhausted but satisfied, I felt something unexpected. Peace. Despite everything, despite the broken family relationships and the uncertainty about the future, I felt like I had done the right thing. I had refused to disappear. I had refused to teach my children that their worth was negotiable. Christmas morning arrived with Lucas jumping on my bed at 6:15, Emma close behind. They dragged me to the living room where our modest tree stood, surrounded by the presents I had carefully saved and budgeted for. We spent the morning in pajamas, opening gifts and playing with new toys and eating breakfast for dinner, because that was our tradition now. Around 10 in the morning, there was a knock at the door. I tensed immediately, but Emma and Lucas were too absorbed in their new art supplies to notice. I walked to the door slowly, unsure what I'd find on the other side. My parents stood in the hallway. Both of them looked like they hadn't slept. My mother's eyes were red and puffy. My father's shoulders sagged. They each held several wrapped presents in their arms. My mother spoke first, her voice hoarse. "We're so sorry, Sean. We were wrong, so completely wrong. Can we please spend Christmas with our grandchildren?" My father added quickly, his own voice thick. "And with you, son. If you'll have us." I looked at them for a long moment, searching their faces for sincerity, for real understanding of what they had done and why it mattered. I saw regret there, genuine regret. But more than that, I saw fear. Fear of losing connection with their grandchildren, with me, of having broken something irreparable. "Come in," I said finally, stepping aside. The change in the apartment was instantaneous. Emma and Lucas screamed with joy, running to hug their grandparents. My parents dropped to their knees, hugging the kids back. My mother crying again, but different tears this time. My father's eyes were wet too as Lucas showed him his new toy truck, and Emma pulled my mother over to see her art supplies. The day was tentative, careful. We didn't talk about Derek or Melissa or the events of 2 nights ago. We just existed together. My parents helping make Christmas dinner in my tiny kitchen. My father getting down on the floor to build a racetrack with Lucas. My mother sitting with Emma and painting watercolors at the kitchen table. In a quiet moment, while the kids were in the living room showing off their new things, my father found me at the sink washing dishes. He picked up a towel and started drying without being asked. We worked in silence for a few minutes before he spoke. "I said you never went anywhere," he said quietly, not looking at me. "That you were stuck. That Derek was going places you never could. I need you to know I was completely wrong about that." I didn't respond, just kept washing. "You became a man who shows up," he continued, "who keeps promises, who puts his kids first no matter what. That's further than most people get in a whole lifetime. That's further than I got, if I'm being honest. I took you for granted because you made everything look easy. I forgot that just because you didn't complain didn't mean you weren't struggling. I'm sorry, Sean. I'm so sorry." I set down the dish I was washing and turned to face him. Being a father isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up and trying to do better when you mess up. You're here now. That matters. He nodded, wiping at his eyes with the dish towel. "We're going to do better. Your mother and I talked all night. We're going to be the grandparents Emma and Lucas deserve, and the parents you deserve." The days after Christmas were strange in the best way. My parents called every day, asking about the kids, making plans to visit. They asked about my work, actually listened when I talked about projects at the auto shop. They showed up to Emma's basketball game on December 30th, sitting with me in the stands, cheering until their voices were hoarse. Derek remained silent. No calls, no texts, nothing. I learned through the family grapevine, through a cousin who reached out, that Melissa had indeed broken up with him permanently. Apparently, her father had called Derek personally to tell him how disappointed he was in his character, in his willingness to deceive and manipulate to get ahead. That call, my cousin said, had hit Derek harder than the breakup itself. 3 days after New Year's, I got a text from Derek. Just 4 words. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I didn't expect forgiveness. I stared at the message for a long time. I wasn't ready to respond. Maybe I would be someday. Maybe not. But I didn't owe him immediate absolution just because he finally acknowledged reality. Forgiveness, real forgiveness, would take time and proof of change. I left the message unread. A week into January, I got a message from Julia, Melissa's sister. She thanked me for handling everything with dignity, for not stooping to cruelty even when I had every right to be angry. She mentioned that Melissa was doing okay, was actually relieved to have discovered Derek's character before things went any further. Julia also said something that stuck with me. She wrote, "You showed her what real integrity looks like. You didn't need to destroy your brother to prove your point. You just existed honestly, and that was enough." At work one afternoon in mid-January, Brian found me during lunch break. We sat in the break room with our sandwiches and coffee. "So," he said, "I've been meaning to ask, how did everything turn out with the whole Christmas situation?" I filled him in on everything. The confrontation at my apartment, Melissa walking out, my parents' tentative reconciliation, Derek's silence, and eventual apology. Brian listened, shaking his head in amazement. "You could have destroyed your brother when you had the chance," he said. "You had all the ammunition, all the moral high ground. You could have made him look terrible. That wouldn't have helped my kids see how real men handle conflict," I said. "I wanted them to see that truth doesn't need cruelty to win, that you can stand up for yourself without tearing someone else down. That integrity matters more than revenge." Brian raised his coffee cup in a mock toast. "That's wisdom right there, man. Your kids are lucky to have you." That weekend, I took Emma and Lucas to the park. It was cold but sunny, one of those crisp winter days where the sky is impossibly blue. They ran around on the playground while I sat on a bench, watching them play, listening to their laughter carry across the frozen grass. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother asking if they could take the kids to the zoo next weekend. I smiled and texted back yes. Then another buzz, this one from Catherine, the single mother I'd met at Emma's Christmas concert. She was asking if the kids wanted to have a playdate with her daughter Zoe, maybe grab pizza together. I responded yes to that too. Life was moving forward, building new connections, healing old wounds. Not perfect, not without scars, but honest and real. Emma came running over, her cheeks flushed from the cold. "Dad, watch me on the monkey bars. I'm getting really good." "I'm watching," I called back. "Show me what you've got." She ran back to the playground equipment, and I watched her climb and swing with determination. Lucas cheering her on from below. These were my kids, beautiful and brave and completely themselves. And they would grow up knowing that their existence was never something to hide, never something to apologize for. Later that evening, after dinner and baths and bedtime stories, after Emma and Lucas were asleep in their room, I sat on my couch in the quiet apartment. I thought about everything that had happened, about the pain and betrayal and ultimately the unexpected healing that had come from refusing to stay invisible. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app. I started typing, trying to put into words what I had learned, what I wanted to remember on hard days, what I hoped my kids would understand someday when they were old enough to really grasp what had happened. I wrote, "Being strong doesn't mean accepting disrespect to keep the peace. Real family isn't about pretending to be perfect or hiding the messy parts. It's about showing up honestly, even when it's hard." My kids didn't need a Christmas at a big house with expensive decorations. They needed to see their father refuse to disappear just to make someone else comfortable. They needed to learn that their existence is never something to apologize for. I paused, thinking about Derek, about my parents, about all the complicated feelings that still swirled around those relationships. I kept writing. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give the people you love is the truth, even when it costs you something. Because at the end of the day, a man who stands for nothing will fall for anything. I refuse to teach my children to shrink themselves to fit into someone else's version of acceptable. I refuse to model a life where love is conditional and worth is negotiable. I set the phone down and looked around my modest apartment. The same apartment that Derek had been ashamed of, that he had erased from his carefully constructed image. But these walls held real life, real love, real moments of joy and struggle and growth. This was worth more than any perfect image could ever be. My phone buzzed one more time. My father had sent a photo. It was from Emma's basketball game earlier that week. Emma mid-shot, tongue sticking out in concentration, the ball arcing toward the basket. My mother, my father, and me were visible in the background, all on our feet, all cheering. Below the photo, my father had written, "This is what matters. Thank you for reminding us." I saved the photo, added it to the collection on my wall, then I turned off the lights and headed to bed, tired but content. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new moments to navigate, new opportunities to show up for my kids. But tonight, I could rest knowing I had done right by them, had taught them something valuable about worth and integrity and the courage to exist honestly in a world that sometimes demands we hide our truth. The story of that Christmas would become part of our family history, a turning point that changed relationships and reset expectations. Emma and Lucas would remember it not as the Christmas they were excluded, but as the Christmas their father showed them that some things are worth fighting for. Even quietly, even without drama, just by refusing to accept anything less than full recognition of their worth. And maybe someday, Derek would understand what he had almost thrown away for an image, for approval, for a relationship built on lies. Maybe he would learn what I had learned that December, that the only life worth living is an honest one, and the only family worth having is the one that sees you completely and loves you anyway. But that was his journey to make. Mine was here, in this small apartment, with my beautiful kids, building a life that was real and messy and completely, honestly ours. Before I finish, I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Have you had to make the choice between keeping the peace and standing up for your worth? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own relationships or the values you want to teach your children, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this story with someone who might need to hear it, someone who's struggling with similar family dynamics or trying to figure out how to stand up for themselves without losing the people they love. Thank you for listening to my story, for taking this journey with me through one of the hardest and most important Christmases of my life. I hope it reminded you that your existence is never something to apologize for, that real love doesn't require you to hide parts of yourself, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply refuse to disappear. Wishing you and your families honesty, integrity, and the courage to love each other completely. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and here's to a new year filled with authentic connections and relationships built on truth. Take care of yourselves and each other.